It began as an innocent invitation. My Aunt Beatrice, a reclusive widow known for her eccentricity, had recently passed away, leaving behind her sprawling estate in the countryside. While the house itself was imposing, it was her garden that everyone whispered about, a labyrinthine paradise rumored to hold the rarest flowers in the world. When the letter from her lawyer arrived, informing me that I was the sole heir, it came with an odd request. Asterisk, visit the garden at dusk before making any decisions about the estate. Asterisk. I had no intention of keeping the property, but curiosity got the better of me. I drove up to the estate late one afternoon, the setting sun casting long shadows over the overgrown driveway. The house loomed in the distance, its dark windows like empty eyes, but my focus was on the garden. The entrance was marked by an ornate iron gate, its design intricate and floral. It creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing unnaturally in the still air. Inside, the garden was breathtaking. Rows of vibrant flowers stretched as far as the eye could see, each bed more colorful and fragrant than the last. Roses in impossible shades of black and gold. Lilies that seemed to shimmer like starlight. Orchids larger than any I'd ever seen. It was impossibly lush, almost unnaturally so. There were no weeds, no dead leaves, no signs of decay. Every plant was in perfect bloom, as if time itself had stopped. A small stone path wound through the garden, and I followed it, marveling at the beauty around me. The air was thick with the scent of flowers, intoxicating and heady, but there was something beneath it, a faint metallic tang that tickled the back of my throat. As I walked, I noticed odd things. The flowers seemed to turn toward me, their petals subtly shifting as I passed, like they were watching. I told myself it was the wind, though the air was completely still. And then there was the statue. In the center of the garden stood a marble statue of a woman, her arms outstretched as if welcoming visitors. She was draped in flowing robes, her face serene but lifelike, almost too much so. Her eyes seemed to follow me as I moved closer. At her feet was a plaque that read, Asterisk, to those who seek eternal beauty, the garden provides. Asterisk. The further I walked, the stranger it became. I passed a row of flowers I didn't recognize, tall, with petals like velvet and a deep crimson color that reminded me uncomfortably of blood. Their stems were thick, almost pulsing, and the faint metallic scent grew stronger. Something crunched underfoot. I looked down to see the path littered with what I first thought were dry leaves. But they weren't leaves, they were bones. Small, delicate bones, like those of birds or rodents, bleached white and half buried in the dirt. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I wanted to turn back, but the path seemed to stretch endlessly ahead, and the air behind me felt thick, almost solid, as if the garden itself was urging me forward. As I rounded a corner, I heard it, a faint whisper like the rustling of leaves, but too rhythmic, too deliberate. Stay, stay, stay. I froze, my heart pounding. The whisper faded, replaced by the distant hum of insects. At last, I reached the heart of the garden, where a small greenhouse stood. Its glass walls were fogged, the interior glowing faintly with an unnatural green light. Inside, the air was suffocatingly warm and damp, and the metallic scent was overpowering. Rows of potted plants filled the space, each one more bizarre than the last. Flowers with jagged petals that looked like teeth. Vines that coiled and writhed, even though there was no breeze. And then I saw it. At the back of the greenhouse was a large, open bed of soil. Rising from it was a single, massive plant, a twisting, gnarled thing with dark, glossy leaves and a cluster of blooms at its center. The flowers were human faces. I stumbled back, clapping a hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. The faces were eerily lifelike, their eyes closed as if in sleep, their features frozen in expressions of peace or pain. I recognized one of them. Aunt Beatrice, I whispered. Her face was among the blooms, her features perfectly preserved. Her lips were slightly parted, as if she was about to speak, and her skin looked impossibly smooth, almost waxy. Before I could process what I was seeing, the plant moved. Its leaves rustled, the stems bending toward me. One of the blooms, a face I didn't recognize, shuddered, its eyes snapping open. Help us, it rasped, its voice dry and cracking. I turned and ran, the greenhouse doors slamming shut behind me. I sprinted through the garden, the path twisting and turning in ways I didn't remember. The flowers seemed to reach for me, their petals brushing against my skin, leaving faint, sticky residue that burned. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices pleading, mocking, and commanding. Stay with us. become one of us. I burst through the iron gate, slamming it shut behind me. The whispers stopped abruptly, and the garden fell silent. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I sold the estate as quickly as I could, refusing to return even to pack up Aunt Beatrice's belongings. But the garden wouldn't let me go so easily. A week later, I woke to find a single flower blooming on my windowsill. It was one of the crimson ones from the garden, its petals velvety and glistening. Beneath it, the soil was streaked with red. The whispers returned that night, louder than ever. Stay, stay, stay. No matter where I go, the flowers follow. They bloom in the cracks of the sidewalk, sprout in the corners of my apartment, and fill my dreams with their sweet, metallic scent. I know what they want, and someday I fear I'll give it to them.